Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call, and I am joined by my brother, the Gritty Broman, also known as Brent Call. How are you, Brent?
I'm well, thank you.
Today's podcast is with Timm, the man with two first names. Timm, but Timm is spelled with two M's.
Mm-hmm. Timm.
Mm-hmm. Timm. I wonder what origin, where does that name come from?
Timm.
Did we find that out? We didn't ask Timm.
We never looked that up.
We didn't ask Kevin that.
No.
Timm. Timm last name origin. The name Timm originated with the Anglo-Saxon tribes that once ruled Britain. It is derived from the old English personal name Timma, or the old German forename Themo. Contrary to some popular theories, Timm is not derived from Timothy, since that name was not introduced in England until after the Restoration.
That's right. Because Timothy's technically Jewish, isn't it? Yeah, Timothy.
Hebrew?
Timothy? Whatever.
I don't know. Yeah. We're Timm. Anglo-Saxon tribe that once ruled Britain.
I could see it. Give him some blue streaks
I
on
just
his
keep
face.
thinking,
He handed some pickaxes.
Yeah, I just keep thinking like Braveheart pops into my head.
Yeah.
Or maybe even like gladiator, Germanic tribes and stuff. We don't even know the history or time period here. We're just spitballing way off the wall. We're probably completely wrong. There's aspects of history I'm quite thoroughly researched on.
I'm familiar with whatever Hollywood has shown me. Whatever they have taught me, that's what I have learned. So, thanks, California.
Yeah. Anyway, Timm is an awesome dude. I didn't know Kevin at all until 2 weeks ago, roughly. We got on the phone and started talking because Ryan Lampert is like, you should talk to Kevin. You know, he owns Seek Outside.
There's not that many people that Lampers talks to.
Right. So
it's the small list.
You perk up and listen. And we got on the phone and Kevin said, we just got to talking. I'm like, hey, we need to get you on the podcast and really talk about what Seek Outside is. For people who don't know, it's backpacks and shelters, backcountry gear, lightweight, durable. Their shelters are kicking butt.
It's more like they're shelters, but people don't know they do backpacks too.
Yeah, and so I've got a pack that I'm going to test. I'm going to use over the next few weeks, taking it to Kodiak, just playing around with it. I've really, really been loving my Stone Glacier. A lot of people have been writing in about that and asking me about that pack. I've had the Sky Talus 6900 or 5900. I can't remember.
Numbers.
But I love the pack. People keep asking me how it compares to packs I've used in the past. The Stone Glacier so far is the most comfortable pack I've ever worn. I love how the hip belt feels. I love how it carries a heavy load and then how it feels when it's empty. Now, I was messing around with the Seek Outside pack. It's very unique. It's totally different than anything.
It looks alien.
It looks a little alien.
Yeah. And Timm goes into depth about that. They didn't take a pack and then start trying to change it. He's
from the ground up.
Yeah, he's just like, I want a pack. And so he just started sketching one day, and then 6 months later they started putting stuff together. But he doesn't come from a backpacking.
No, and so it's kind of nice because it's a very unique design. I think it sort of confuses people. It's probably a little overwhelming, but we'll see how it does. I'm going to put it through the paces.
It's waterproof.
Yeah. So is the Kafaro Muskeg. I love the material that they're both using the same kind of material. I think the Seek Outside is a thicker, more heavy duty version of the same material, but it's a great pack, great material. So I'm pretty stoked on trying it out. Another pack I want to try out is the XO. Lampers is in love with that pack too. So there's a few out there I haven't really tested hardcore in a while. It's pretty cool that there's that many great packs out there. But I think a pack and boots are two things, and a shelter and a sleeping bag are four things that are like seriously game-changing things, you really got to have dialed to have a great backcountry hunt. We'll get into more details. On the Seek Out side, I've been running the Cimarron teepee with lampers on the bear hunt and now the tar hunt. And for those that have missed it, you should go watch our videos. People are digging them.
They're pretty cool.
They're cool. The bear hunt and the tar hunt. You won't regret it. You'll like them. I mean, I haven't really met anyone who said they didn't like the films. So we're doing a video every Sunday. On the tar thing, we got 2 more to go. We've dropped 3. We got 2 more. So there'll be one this Sunday and then the following Sunday.
And then I'm taking a break.
Yeah. We are cranking hard on those and frankly, day and night to try to get those out and then keep the podcast rocking too. But I think you'll like it. Check that out. You'll see the Cimarron in use. You'll see the Aeolus in the bear hunt. We use the Silex in New Zealand as well. The non-Cuban fiber Silex. What's amazing is the square footage that you're getting out of the Cimarron, and it's 1.5 pounds. It's made out of Dyneema Cuban fiber, and that's kind of new, at least in the hunting space, for people. They don't really know what it is. It's a unique material. It's super lightweight while still maintaining strength. It's got pros and cons. For me though, I love the fabric. I've been in love with it for almost 10 years. I've had a tarp that I've used for years, long before I started Gritty. I've always loved Cuban fiber. So it's pretty cool to see, Seek Outside go in that direction, because competitor tents that are made out of a different material that are similar in size, they range from, 3.5 to 4 pounds or more for the same setup. So 1.5 pounds, man. It's like, it's 1.5 pounds.
It's hard to not take it everywhere you go.
Well, and the stove itself is 1.5 pounds as well. And so you're dealing with, if I carry 1.5 pounds and Lampers carries 1.5 pounds, we're set. And we have a tent with a stove. And for late season, man, that is a game changer. So we get into that on this show. It's good stuff. I hope you like it. Check out Seek Outside. They got some great stuff going on. And then if you have questions, send them to us. I wanted to read a couple of comments people left on the videos of the tar hunts. It's cool because our first videos got already at 400 likes and almost 17,000 views, and it's just been out a few days, about a week and a half, 2 weeks. And then we have our other video that's out, that's trucking along as well, and their third one just the other day. It's really cool. The comments have been great. It's like 100% positive. I really appreciate that people are engaging, and
I might be a little biased, but they're pretty badass.
Yeah. One of the comments, I found myself watching films like this instead of normal outdoor shows. This is great. You should gather all of the old footage and continue filming new stuff and release a weekly show. Thank you for the quality entertainment. That was Matthew Moon. He left that comment 13 hours ago. Matthew, I totally agree. And that's why Brent is going to start doing that all the time. No, weekly's a little intense. What we're going to do is when we have a series, we're going to drop it weekly. Every Sunday. Try to do it every Sunday or Monday. And then what we plan to do when we don't have a series going is we have one-off episodes, and we're going to try to do a show every other week during that time. But basically, we have about 30 episodes that we're going to drop throughout the year. That's our goal. That's our plan. 30 episodes. So that's 30 weeks out of 52 in a year. So more weeks than not. And so if it's not every Sunday, it's going to be every other Sunday. And we have footage from Prince of Wales, Southeast Alaska. We have more elk footage. We have all the news, we have the footage from last year's 192-inch mule deer.
With Brock's.
That Brock shot, and we have some footage. I have some killer whitetail. I know a lot of Western guys aren't too into that, but we have some great whitetail stuff for the whitetail guys. I love whitetail hunting, so we have more archery mule deer, rifle mule deer, cool stuff. So we'll get that stuff published and out the door. Another comment. Crazy landscape, gritty indeed. I can't imagine what it must be like to film it all. Thanks for creating and sharing an awesome hunt video. Good on you guys. Cheers. Lots of New Zealanders chiming in, lots of Kiwis. Really appreciate that, the support. And you wonder, you don't want to do someone's country wrong. You don't want to step on toes. You don't want to do any cultural gaffes, Mm-hmm. But the people in New Zealand are straight up awesome. They treated us they're just the coolest people. Very welcoming. And then as I've dropped the video series, they've been stoked on it. They really appreciated what we produced. I'm just thrilled with the response. And New Zealand is a cool place. I really hope that this gets more U.S. people interested in going there, or people Canada.
Dude, my wife, we have a little jar, says tar on the side of it. She's saving up money. Daisy's goal, she wants to go over and shoot one.
Yeah.
She's not super into the horns. She wants the mane. And she's trying to find, anyone knows of a place that can take that and turn it into a coat. That's what she wants. She wants a tar-hooded coat. There's
things that the Kiwis say that I don't know what it means sometimes. Like Jeremy McCauley says, good to see you boys coming here to New Zealand to do a proper hunt, do it yourself. DIY. Hard graft, but rewarding. Hard graft. I don't really know what that means. Like you graft a tree.
Yeah, that's the only kind of grafting I can think. A skin graft.
And then he said, in New Zealand, we say, do the mahi, get the treats. So, yeah. I don't know.
The mahi?
We're going to have to dig that one up.
Like the fish? Mahi.
This guy said, outstanding. You guys rock. Keep the videos coming. The best hunting team and show on YouTube. I also can't wait to buy some more gear that you highlighted on the show. Thanks. That's another thing is we've been putting up gear info on each show.
Yeah, so I don't have to answer these questions.
What was that? A lot of people just seem to really like it. It doesn't interfere with the flow of the show very much. It informs people. It's educational. Of course, some of that stuff are partners of mine that are sponsoring Gritty, so it's great to be able to feature their stuff as they're supporting what I do. But it's not like in your face. And then there's a lot of stuff that, frankly, like I'm not sponsored by Seek Outside. I'm not sponsored by Stone Glacier. I'm not sponsored by Sea to Summit. I'm not sponsored by, Jetboil. Like most of the stuff that Ryan and I and that we talk about, I'm not sponsored by Christensen Arms. I'm not sponsored by Hornady. Like these are just products we like to use and then we get to share. So
the Lampers would like to get sponsored by that Jetboil. He is in love with that thing. It is seriously, every scene with him, he's holding it.
I think he's had it like 12 years. I think he just likes fire and food. He likes
I kid
food,
you not. A third of the footage is him hanging out with his mini-mo.
Hot drinks and food. Like he's constantly.
Always.
Yeah.
There's a Packaroon in one hand and the Jetboil making some hot coffee or making some Ignite and stuff.
Somebody asked, I mentioned in the last video that I was not impressed with the Chilcoat sleeping bag from Stone Glacier. And I got a lot of questions about that. Like, why were you not impressed? I should have. If you had followed the podcast after the bear hunt, you'd kind of get what I didn't like about it. And let me explain. I felt like on the bear hunt, it was pretty hot.
Mm-hmm. It was a spring hunt.
It was a spring hunt, and the sleeping bag
It tapers, right?
It tapers right at the knees. So it's still fairly spacious, but just above the knees for me, it's not as tapered. So you can't spread your legs out wide. You can't really sprawl out in the back. You can sprawl out from the waist up, but not really from the waist down.
I don't care about the waist up.
Ryan says he has, I think Ryan has skinnier legs, less butt, less thigh, less. So maybe he does have a little more room in there.
Some people, when they stand, their thighs aren't touching. I'm not one of those people. I have to provide extra room.
You and me both. So I think, I think that's part of the reason what I felt was cramped and I had a hard time sleeping. And I knew that the temperature could have a lot to do with that because when you're in winter and it's real cold, you're not sprawling out. You're like
fetal position,
tucking in and
trying to trap warmth.
Totally. And that bag felt spacious and roomy and super comfy on the tar hunt. I think that if I had the proper temp rating for the bear hunt, I would have loved it too. Here's what's great about the bag. It's compact.
Mm-hmm.
It's super lightweight, and the weight to warmth ratio is off the charts. It's got treated down, so even though it gets a little bit wet, it can dry out very quickly, and it's still a little bit warm while it's still a little bit damp.
Mm-hmm.
Where other down, like straight up down, can really go flat on you instantly. The downside is it is down. And so if it does get wet, you're screwed. Like if it gets thoroughly wet, you're screwed until you dry it out. Whereas synthetic bag, often, even though it gets wet, I'll be honest, I still love my Kifaru Slick bag. I like the top zip design.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer that over a side zip, 100%. And I also like that it pretty much can get stormed on, but it's also bulkier and way heavier.
Yeah.
And so it's like you pick your poison. I think for 90% of the hunts I do, it's going to be the Stone Glacier Chilkoot sleeping bag because it just is the right blend of everything, especially if I'm bringing a stove with me. If I have a heat source, I'm not too worried about the down getting damp or a little bit wet. I can always dry things out.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm in a place where you're truly screws or life is threatened because your bag is totally done for, which generally you have clothing that still helps, but man, what a miserable way to go. So if it's that kind of thing, I might bring a synthetic bag instead. Clayton, he said, great video series, blah, blah, blah. He said, last thing, I typed in your Mountain Ops code and it didn't reduce the price. Am I doing something wrong? So the Mountain Ops code bounces around. Right now, it's free shipping. You put in the gritty code at checkout at Mountain Ops and you get free shipping. It's going to change, though. Another week, it might be 10% off or 20% off, or it's a free hat and shirt or stuff like that. So we're working on adjusting that every couple of weeks. The default is going to always be free shipping if it's not something better. Anyway, the code gritty, that's all you need to type in and you'll save some money. Another thing, we have Sissy Sticks is a friend of ours, Bryce, and you get a discount. What is it, 15%?
Yep.
15% if you use the code gritty when you buy yourself a pair of Sissy Sticks, which are trekking poles, carbon upper, aluminum lower. Ryan and I beat the hell out of them in two different. I did it in the bear hunt, and then I used the same pair in New Zealand on like 20-something days of gnarly shale and rock. And I really should have had ice axe up there in New Zealand, not trekking poles, or at least not solely trekking poles. And those things just held up. They held up. They're impressive. They can take a beating, which is really what we were mostly concerned with. They are still extremely lightweight because of the use of the carbon.
It bent though on one day, didn't it?
Bent like 3 times.
Oh yeah.
But aluminum is gonna bend the bottom half. When I'm in a boulder field coming down with a heavy load fast and I fall and it goes in and you bend it over, and I bent it back and everything was fine. So and again, we're talking about using those things on a hunt that was just unreal. It was my backpack. Everything took a beating. Everything got cut up and when you're hunting in terrain that's like New Zealand,
ice and sharp rocks.
Yeah, those peaks of those mountains were all rock, and you're really putting pressure on those poles for everything because you didn't want to slide off a bluff and die. So they were great. So, Sean Bliss. Sean's left a couple of comments, so I appreciate that, Sean. He said, the camera moved ploy. Come on, guys, be honest. You missed it, didn't you? It's okay to miss. I missed a stag once and ended up poleaxing the white stag standing behind it. That I wasn't meant to shoot. But again, guys, another awesome video. Well done. Tahr are an unreal animal to hunt in New Zealand. So fast when they decide to leg it. I guess that means
run.
Really run. Another weird New Zealand. When you come back, please bring crampons, rope, and ice axes, as there is many an underprepared dead man still in those there hills. I'll bloody send you mine if I have to. So appreciate that comment. Yeah, he's referring to in the third video called Cliffed Out. Ryan and I get into position, and this is the problem with me being the cameraman, shooter, hunter, the whole deal. Like, I need Ryan to carry a little more weight, so we're going to have to try to train Ryan to, like, run a camera a little bit more. It's a super steep cliff or hillside. Like, we're sliding down it as we're trying to, like, set up on this rock to shoot this tar. And you set the camera up, and it's the best level spot you can get, but it's right where you're trying to take the shot too. And as I was adjusting to take the shot, the camera, I forgot to tighten the camera's pan head. Mm-hmm. And as I'm moving in to take the shot, the camera's like swinging
with you every time you shifted.
And so it's pointing at the rocks like 6 feet away by the time I pull the trigger. And Ryan is busy filming me from behind with the other camera. And also, Ryan is not a cameraman. He's more of a hunter. So while he's filming me, he's also like glassing, the actual tar so he can see it get shot, through the binos. And so he's too preoccupied to notice that the camera is completely off target. Plus, it's not on his mind. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm continually like freaked out. Am I getting the shot? Am I filming it? Am I filming it? But at that moment, I was behind the scope taking the shot, and I didn't see it. And then afterward, I was devastated because, man, it was a beautiful shot, and it was standing on that cliff. And as soon as it gets hit, and you can hear the hit, like it goes thwack, like you can hear it hit the tar, and it like takes like 1 or 2 steps, and then just tips, and it just free falls upside down just falls. It disappears.
That's cool.
And it just poofed. It just landed in the snow and stuck on the ledge below, about 100 feet. So it was really cool to see that on video, or to see that in real life. I wish we had captured it on video. But we captured Ryan's tar. You get to see that moment. So anyway, it was awesome. Awesome video again, guys. I am subscribed to the newsletter so that I can hear about new films as soon as they come out. So that's something I wanted to bring up was sign up for the newsletter at briancall.com. Right now, we're giving away a pair of Santiam binoculars from Leupold, the top-of-the-line BX5 10x42 binoculars. They're freaking great set of binos. We're giving those away to someone. All you got to do to get the binos is be signed up to the newsletter, and you'll get the binos. Yeah, sign up for that. And then also, we're going to let you know when we finish a film, so you can be informed. And part of the reason for that is a few people have left comments, a bunch of comments on our channel. And then they're like, hey, I can't see my comment. Did you delete it? We're not deleting comments, but nope. YouTube has these community guidelines, and you've seen it lately on the page above the comment sections on videos. It says, make sure you follow our community guidelines. Yep. If you put the word in hate, or redneck, dumb redneck, or something that's like insulting, derogatory. YouTube has all these woke feelings that they got to protect. So now they're censoring comments and they're stopping half of the stuff. Like people, we're especially in it, like kill, gun, certain phrases are getting blocked. And they also deranks our videos pretty much because there's a gun in it and we're hunting. YouTube deranks a lot of what we're doing. If it's archery, it's much more friendly toward archery films than it is gun films.
Generally, our videos get some views and they crank up and then they kind of slow down, but they still keep generating views. A couple ones we put out lately, they've hit a wall.
Yeah, it's word of mouth that YouTube's not doing me any favors. If you go into the into your analytics and you look at how much of your views were a result of YouTube sharing your content to consumers, like-minded consumers, our numbers are really low on that. We can't seem to get them to go up, partly because I think we show the skinning, the gutting, we show the blood, we show the kills.
It's just suitable for all viewers.
Yeah. So it gets restricted. So anything you can do to share it is great. Sign up for the newsletter, though, and then we can reach out to you directly and say, hey, new film's out.
Go to briancall.com, and you scroll down to the bottom. You can sign up for the newsletter. And while you're there, folks, scroll up to the top. Go to the shop.
Yeah, buy a hat and shirt. And, by the way, if you're on the newsletter, you're entered to win a set of binos, which we're going to give away September 15th.
Congratulations.
to some lucky soul. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Check out this podcast with Kevin Timm. Good stuff with Seek Outside. And as always, stay gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I am your host, Brian Call. And I am joined today with a man with two first names, Kevin Timm.
How you doing?
Good. And Timm ends in two M's.
Yes, it does.
Two M's. So that's a little different.
It is. I've always had an issue with it my whole life. I mean, as a kid, I just learned to come to Kevin or Tim, and it was just, so you just kind of answer to both.
Kevin Timm.
Yep.
And you are the owner, inventor, founder of Seek Outside.
Along with my wife, Angela.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you started it in 2010?
Yeah, we started in 2010. It's grown to a lot more than we ever imagined in the beginning. I mean, it started with me snowshoeing, and I was trying to think of a way how to get my dad into a backcountry elk hunt, and because he hadn't done that and he was getting up there in years. I had thought about, tried to rent huts and stuff, and came home from snowshoeing, said, got this idea for a nylon teepee that you can put fire in. And Angie's like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
Was there anything else out at the time that was kind of similar? Or?
Well, there was, once I did a little bit of research. I was unaware of that stuff at the time.
Gotcha.
Obviously, I mean, you've done podcasts with some of the other companies and stuff. So yeah, there was some other stuff out there, and then I was kind of like, well, we could just go buy something. She's like, oh no, we're not buying anything. And
at the time, like income wise, what are you doing with your life?
I was a security researcher for a big internet company.
Okay.
So I was doing security research, and wasn't necessarily that happy doing it. I mean, I just loved going out and playing in the mountains. I like to ultra run and peak bag and climb mountains and hunt. And, my perfect day was if I could knock out 25 miles in the woods and, going over ridge, over ridge, over ridge, be it chasing peaks or chasing elk until you tap out. I had hunting buddies I'd go out with, and sometimes they'd be like, no more, no more, I'm not going over the next ridge.
Yeah. And
so that was kind of it. And, and then we bought some material, made a couple samples, first one looked kind of like a witch's hat. Yeah. And I was like, oh, wait, I didn't do that math right.
Yeah.
But the second one actually came out pretty nice. And the third one we started using as a family tent, and we made a couple small ones for backpacking, big ones for family use. And stuff like that. And then, really, we're kind of refined by probably the third or fourth one. We had a lot of the features that are in them now,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it was just taking the security researcher mind and applying it to.
Well, I was going to say, it's interesting. I just came across, the first time I'd seen Seek Outside was at a BHA event, a Backcountry Hunters and Anglers event, maybe 4 years ago. And they were set up outside in, I think it was Missoula.
Yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. Walked through the teepees, checked them out. Everything seemed like it was pretty well done. And I knew that I'd seen Ranella use them on a couple of hunts.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was intrigued. And so then fast forward, and I was going hunting with Ryan Lampers just 6 months ago, a few months back, hanging out with Ryan, and he'd been using the little bug out shelter from Seek. And then he was talking about the new Dyneema and the Cimarron and all this stuff. And, there's the Aeolus and so we get to talking over the last few months, and then I get to use them and put them to use in the mountains. And it's been that you've got some really innovative and just some killer gear. And I'm wondering, how does a security IT guy, it's not like you went to school for engineering or anything, or that you come to the table with, Did you?
Well, I actually did at one point go to school for engineering, but I never made it through. Long time ago, I actually wanted to.
Really?
A long time ago, I wanted to be a engineer, and I used to do audio stuff. I actually used to make guitar amplifiers that were really pretty well regarded as well. Yeah. In fact, I got a couple of them going a few days ago. I sold some maybe 15 years ago to a really high-end guitar shop and stuff, and they didn't pay me for the last couple that I built. But I've always been kind of into developing quirky stuff that is maybe a little different. And I don't know, I've had the discussion. So we met Ranella early in the game by total happenstance. We ended up sitting at a table at the very first BHA Rondi, and it turned out that it was Steve and his brother were the other two people sitting at the table.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of how we got to chatting with that, right? And I've also kind of told some of these stories to, I'm trying to think of his name, Joe, who's from 0.0 Productions, that talked to him at SHOT a few years ago. But it really isn't that big of a jump when you start to think about it, because I've applied a lot of the same process kind of to each of them. Even if you go into the security world, I wrote a lot of papers. It was kind of wild west, needing a definition when I was in it in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, I developed, threat rating systems on how to classify events and stuff like that. I wrote programs that would take in huge amounts of data and turn them into the things that you need to worry about and bring the content that is needed for them. It isn't that big of a leap in either of them. There's a certain way that I have a tendency to think about creating something, which is to take it down to its attributes that I'm trying to get out of it, what I'm really trying to get, and to do it as simply as I can. And then really it's nothing but just kind of sticking your nose to the grindstone and trying different ideas until stuff, like the EOLIS and Silex, the zipperless concepts that we've introduced this year. I had those in the back of my mind for years, and I kept thinking that work, and I brought it up to a couple different people over time. They're like, "Oh, that's not going to work. That's not going to work." I was just kind of like, I think I can get that math to work, And finally, a couple of years ago, I said, "Oh, we got to build one of these. I'm just going to kind of go in, make everyone unhappy at the shop, and be like, here's what we're doing." We're sewing this. I got to see if this works. I'm curious about it. And it's like, that does kind of work. Now it needs a little bit of refinement. It needs a little bit of this. And you solve those little problems and test it. And
well, it's interesting too, because that's kind of a running theme though. There's a number of companies, like I can think of XO, Steve Speck, comes out with a backpack. Like, who does he think he is to just come out with a backpack?
I know. It's like, well, people just think they're gear designers all of a sudden, or what?
Stay in your lane, all right?
Yeah, stay in your lane. You had an archery shop.
Right. And then, boom, comes out, and he, from the ground up, thinks of things, likes aspects of different things, but comes together with his own kind of, this is what I think. And you see that throughout the industry, actually, the hunting community and outside.
Kurt as well.
Yeah.
From Stone Glacier, yeah. And he has some pretty neat ideas as well, and he just implemented them into what he thought the right way to go for a lightweight hunting backpack was. It's not a whole lot different.
And you did the same thing. Like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Build backpacks.
Yeah. I should get back to writing code or doing some sort of boring security
No, it's
stuff,
interesting, though, because I think, like you said it well, you have a way of thinking and problem solving and follow through that is unique to you, and you're able to take that and apply it in an area that you're passionate about, like the outdoors, and come up with a solution. You didn't need vast years of schooling and stuff to do this. You needed a basic set of intelligence or skills to.
Right. Like, say, take backpacks. I hike in the mountains a lot, spend a lot of time in the mountains. I watch people suffering with backpacks. I see what issues they're having. You know, I can sit there and tell, like, well, that's the last time that guy's going backpacking with his family. You know, and I think, you know, I have my kind of philosophy and thoughts on certain things. And I think sometimes we're doing people a disservice by not providing them good quality gear from the get-go. I think you take someone who says, man, I think I'd like to go backpacking or go out in the mountains and try this. And the quickest way to ruin their drive is to give them a bunch of crappy gear that doesn't work well for them right off the bat.
You're right. That can ruin an experience. It's like if I take my wife or my kids out, I want to make sure that their gear is dialed because I want to make sure this is kind of fun.
Right.
That it's enjoyable, that it's not a suffer fest. Later, and this is for...
Then you introduce suffering.
Then you introduce... when you're addicted to the challenge and the experience, then suffering can come in. But if you just make them suffer right off the bat...
Yeah, there's no fun in that.
They haven't evolved
had not learned
to do
that lesson when I was younger.
Yeah, I mean, when we took our kids backpacking, and I mean, I can go back to some scouting stories too. Winter camping. I mean, boots frozen over like this.
Right.
You're walking around in your socks in the snow, and you're like, oh, well, I got to wait for the fire to thaw out my boots so I can put my foot in it.
Yeah.
You know? But yeah, I mean, if you just take them out and show them misery and suffering right off the bat, there's not a whole lot of people that are going to be into that.
Yeah.
You got to get them kind of hooked a little bit. Be like, hey, look at this great view, elk bugling. This is all good. And then you throw 110 pounds on their back, and it's like, now you get to see suffering.
So you watch all these people kind of suffer and go through, and you just decided, you know, you're going to build gear that solves that problem?
Yeah. Essentially, I don't know. I mean, we'll jump forward out of tents to packs a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I just want to insert here before you do that. I've been following Seek Outside for a long time. Like I've seen the shelters. I've followed the content. I've been on the Instagram page since I think started it right after that BHA event. But I didn't even know you had packs.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
I didn't know. I had no idea until like a couple months back.
Same.
We've typically we've not done a good job marketing it. Two, I mean, our shelters are doing really well, so I don't lose a whole lot of sleep over it.
Yeah.
Three, I think we make a really good pack, but it is very different. I mean, we did not start out with anyone else's pack and want to attempt to improve upon it or whatever. We basically threw everything else and we started with right here. Let's define what we want as a hunting backpack. And I mean, actually there was probably 6 months of just like feature definition and what it should do. Spread the load wide. We want to spread the load wide. We want to use minimal material. We don't want to be too wide up here because we don't want you to get caught up going through the brush, and those features, and then figure out ways to implement them and the materials that made sense, right? So,
yeah, I have one here that I just got from you here, and we messed around with it today.
Yeah,
and it's unique. It's totally different. It doesn't look like any of the other packs I've put my hands on or used that are the kind of the standard hunting pack, top of the line packs in our industry. Right. It's a little bit daunting in the sense that, what are these straps for? And what is this, floating belt? And what is some of these things that I'm not familiar with?
Right. I mean, my opinion is we can probably fit, and I'm not really here to talk packs.
Right.
But it can probably fit more people better than about any pack out there. Because the frame height's adjustable, the belt has different ways it can be used. You can get it dialed in. It can be daunting for people, though. And there's going to be some people that see
it's just foreign.
Yeah, it's just foreign. It is a different concept. We did not set out to copy anyone on that. We set to throw what packs were out the window and start it over again.
I like trying new stuff, so this will be cool. I'll throw it out. I'll put some loads in it, and I'll take it on some hunts, and I'll see how it feels. I've been using the Stone Glacier for a while now, and really put that through some paces between the bear hunt and the New Zealand hunt. We did these in the spring here.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with the material of the pack since I used the Kifaru muskeg, and you've got the same kind of material which you've been using for a lot longer.
Yeah, we introduced our packs with it. We view it as having a lot of benefits. One, keeps your stuff relatively dry. We design most of our pack bags with an intention of that you do not need a rain cover.
Yeah.
Rain covers to us are a flawed idea. You're left with, people think, well, I want a bunch of pockets in my pack. Well, it starts raining. You're left with, do I put this rain cover on and cover everything up and I have access to nothing? Or do I have access?
Yeah.
And then you find out, well, you didn't put your rain cover on. It started raining a little worse. And now your pack's kind of wet and still your puffy jacket got a little wet. And all of those things are solvable really at a base level. Yeah. I mean, I did a trip in the Arctic a few years ago, caribou hunt, and I'm not the world's greatest rafter, and I ended up flipping in my kayak. And my stuff went downriver, flipped with it, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I didn't have my sleeping bag or anything special or anything. And you know what? There was maybe like a teaspoon of water in the bag. There was nothing really. And it probably took a 200-300 yard ride downriver submerged.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it does seem like a dry bag on your back.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's got that capability. I put the muskeg through a lot of work too, and pouring rain and just drenching conditions in BC, and it's nice to have. I like the material. I said it right after I got back from that last hunt, how much I like that material. Yeah. So it'll be cool to check it out.
It also cleans up real easily. Doesn't leave a residual smell. I mean, you can tell with dogs around, right? You get a pack bloody, and sometimes your dog's never going to leave that pack alone.
Yeah.
But I can take these packs and wipe them out and leave them on the floor, and my dog doesn't really care.
Let's talk about the shelters, because I think that what you're producing is pretty unique. So we've used the Cimarron, Ryan and I got to say, it's right around that 1.5 pound mark. It's almost, what is it, a 9.5 by 8.5 foot kind of footprint? Is it something like that?
Yeah, it's something, but it has subtle angles. I mean, the Cimarron, going back to the way you think, right? The Cimarron really was an attempt to make the standard mid everyone had been familiar with, make it simple, make it familiar, but to improve it in substantive ways. And so differences from the Chenard mids and the Go Lights and all the predecessors are that it has subtle angles built into it, right? They do provide a little bit of extra space for storage. But on top of that, the subtle angles also improve wind shedding because you're not likely to go to a sail as quickly. You got a little bit of shaping to it. So
how do you achieve that subtle angle?
Just in the cuts, and how we did it.
You guy it out and...
No, it's just, you can guy it out, but the subtle angle is just in basically how we did the panels. I mean, I took our first prototype and I set it up and I was kind of like, I think we can do subtle angles in this that will improve its wind performance. Technically it should reduce flat-sidedness and to be a sail. The other thing we improved was we changed the seam construction from what standard mids were. Standard mids, to understand that, is basically fabrics usually have a way that they don't stretch much and a way that they do stretch, and that's the bias. And most mids usually were like 4 and 4, so they'd have 4 strong seams, 4 weak seams. And we changed our seam construction and how we cut it to being that it has 6 strong seams and only 2 seams that have a little bit of give to them, and then we put the guy outs on those to increase the room. And it's Yeah, it's a pyramid tent, functions like pyramid tent, does everything like pyramid tent, but we think we added some good improvements to what hadn't been done to pyramid tents before.
So my experience, super lightweight, easy to set up, running with a stove, it's like comfort deluxe castle.
Yep.
I would expect that setup. I think Ryan and I, it was right around 3 pounds total with the stove.
Yeah, probably 3.5, something like that. We're fixing to release a lighter stove too.
Okay.
I probably can have that set up in the 3 pound range with a stove.
And it seems utterly insane that it's that light, because another setup, I have a similar setup, it's like 6 pounds. So you're talking about, almost double the weight for about the same comfort level.
So
how do you do that?
I like to kind of joke a little bit with people. I mean, 15 years ago, most people would be thinking of wall tent and horses for an elk hunt.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And then people were like, well, I got a 10-pound backpack I carry back in the woods and a 8-pound tent. I got a 60-pound load in, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go with our setup, I don't like to have a pack that weighs more than 4 pounds. So I keep that. I can have a pack, tent, stove, 7, 8 pounds. I can have a nice Western mountaineering bag, be back there practically living up like I'm in my house for like 10 pounds, and be able to carry an elk off the mountain if I need to, So, how we get to that? Well, some of it's materials. You mentioned Dyneema. I know you have some history with Dyneema. The Dyneema is incredibly light and very strong. It's not perfect, but it definitely has a lot of compelling benefits for a lot of uses where it's not perfect. A little bit of give every now and then. It puts a little more stress on your stakes, a little more stress on your pole.
And that's because it doesn't stretch, right?
Right. And it's kind of like, think about cars
Mm-hmm.
in crashes, right? Now cars are made to have a lot of give, crumple zones, airbags, all these things, right?
Yeah.
Versus when cars were just big old steel boxes and you didn't even wear a seatbelt.
Yeah.
And so, there is a likelihood at the more extreme performance levels of possibly a little more catastrophic failure, but that's going into the more extreme performance levels. We tested it in pretty big snow, pretty big wind, stuff like that within reason. And there's some things like, just jokingly, Angie and I took a Dyneema Cimarron to Alaska this year, and we were going to sleep in some campgrounds, and we thought, this is a stupid idea with this see-through tent in a campground where it's light 24/7.
Right.
That doesn't feel like privacy.
Yeah.
I wish I would have just brought a nylon tent, especially since we weren't packing weight of any sort.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. The Dyneema, I like that it doesn't stretch. It's kind of nice that when I set it up, I don't have to go back out later and, redo up the guy lines and get everything tightened. It's kind of nice, but finding that tightness level that's appropriate so it doesn't like yank the stakes out.
Well, I brought you my personal one as a loaner. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So because I don't have anything planned for the next few weeks. So I'll have to get you that before I head out. But
I'm excited too.
I put some elastic tensioners.
That's what I was going to ask.
So you could use those to give a little bit of that. But yeah, you don't have to. And in our nylon shelters, I think we do a better job than anyone at getting away from the need to tension it much, but you still do somewhat, right? Then Dyneema, no. You don't have to do that. Rainproof, for days and days and days. Take the military waterproof rating and multiply it by about 15, and that's where Dyneema sits.
Yeah.
It's very not affected by sun.
I bought a tarp from Z-Packs in 2000, I think 8 or 9 or something.
It would have been
Dyneema, Cuban fiber. I don't know if it was Dyneema, Cuban fiber.
Well,
What's this? Tell me about that.
So they're the same thing.
Okay.
it used to be Cubic Deck. And they started out, it's funny because our packs use primarily X-Pack for the main pack bag. X-Packs, actually, their core business is racing sales. And, their side business is, backpack fabrics and bike packing fabrics, right? It's really trippy when you get them, when they send you the wrong roll and it's racing sale material. Yeah. But Cubic Tech also, their core desire for it was as racing sales. But people adopted it into tents, right? And it did pretty well. And we were actually going to introduce some limited Dyneema tents probably about 4 years ago. We made a little bug out in that, and I had what was known as the BT2, and we had a few tents floating around made out of that. But then as we were getting ready to do that, Cubic Tech, which was Cuban Fiber, was sold to Dyneema, the company. So now it's called Dyneema. Some people refer to it, and I usually refer to it as DCF, so it's Dyneema Cuban Fiber, because it really is basically inside it has this Dyneema kind of sandwich pattern, right? Ripstop pattern, and then it's really laminated with different thicknesses of Mylar over the top. So it isn't like pure Dyneema, it's Dyneema Cuban Fiber, and that's what it is, right? Okay. There's been other people have attempted to copy it, but I mean, it's pretty well patent protected, and I don't think there's going to be anything that really matches it.
Now, one of the things that a lot of people, there's two things that people have traditionally said about Cuban Fiber that sometimes bothers them, and that is the noise, being a louder fabric. And I will say, like, my tarp, when I set it up, and it would whip in the wind, I mean, it could make some serious noise if I didn't have it tied down pretty good or set up well. But running the Aeolus and the Cimarron, I did not have any noise, really.
They're pretty tight shelters.
And is that because of the design?
Yeah, that's. I mean, we put a lot of care into making sure we have the right cuts to take up slack in the fabric and to improve wind performance. So in the case of the Aeolus, true thing, I did had Angie drop me off at the Mexico border with my dog in March.
Yeah.
And I just started hiking through the desert on the Continental Divide for a few days, right? And I had the Aeolus, and it was good. And one day I ran into another guy, and we ended up hiking, and, he set up his tent, which was a Nemo, not too far from mine. It was a real windy night. And I kept getting woken up from his tent blowing in the wind. I don't know if he didn't stake it well or could have tensioned it better or what, but his tent was the one waking me up. My tent,
not yours.
I was fine.
The other thing I've heard people say, and this is true with a single wall shelter in general, but they say it's because of the material that it gets more condensation. Is that accurate?
I don't think it gets more or less, honestly. The number one thing you can do to prevent condensation is to raise the pitch of it up off the ground a little bit. Yeah. Get a little bit of airflow. And really it's think about all the moisture that's trapped in the ground. When you pitch tight, you're trapping all of that in your tent, and then you have your moisture and everything too. You pitch up this far off the ground, gives a little bit of air movement, and also allows that moisture to go other places, right? Now, some people don't like to do that. Some people...
It can get chilly when it's up.
Right. Some people are... And it's funny because, especially in floorless, you see the evolution of people as a floorless camper, right? When we first started making teepees, I took my brother on a trip in the Weminuche, right? We were climbing some peaks and stuff, right? And we had like our 3-person teepee at the time, right? We were camped up above tree line, And man, he wanted to have that thing so zipped up tight,
Right.
And
Yeah.
it got to be almost funny for me that I just go ahead and leave the zipper open and not really worry about it, just because I knew that it aggravated him so much that he could be like, it looked like he's asleep and he'd have to go over there and zip it tight. Right? But I'd just kind of get a little chuckle and I'd be like, I don't have to mess with it. He's going to do it. He's aggravated by it, right? But I mean, over quite a few backcountry trips I've done in the summer with my brother, I mean, he's fine sleeping under a tarp, bivvying out, now. I mean, it's just...
It is an evolution.
It is. It's funny. I was talking with Trail from Go Hunt about that. And sometimes I'm sarcastic and he's like, people ask like what it's like, and I'm like, well, I tell them like, have you ever like laid out in your yard and like, watched the clouds go by, and you're just watching the clouds, nice day, and then you just kind of doze off. It's kind of like that, but you have like a shelter over you,
right? There's, yeah. People ask about that for bugs or fear or snakes or something crawling in or mice But once you've spent some time in it's nothing, And we slept outside in sleeping bags since I was a little kid, just under the trampoline or just in the grass. I mean, we slept out in the open my whole childhood. So it wasn't a big deal. We'd get rained on in the middle of the night and I'll have to scramble in the house because we didn't have a shelter over us.
I mean, a cowboy camp is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I mean, people will think like, well, I don't want to go out in the backcountry with a backpack be in a tiny little tent. Don't even sleep in a tent. I felt bad. I own a tent company, and one year I don't think I slept in a tent until almost fall.
Yeah.
I usually was just bivvied under a tree or something. I thought, like, I'm really slacking as a guy who owns a tent company in this.
Yeah. Absolutely. And so I think that is an evolution, guys. People get used to that and they realize it's not a thing. But a single wall shelter with a little bit of skill, I don't get condensation, just pitching it a little higher. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's mostly.
And it has caused me to change my sleeping bag setup a little bit to account for wind. Having a bag where the wind just cuts right through it has been a little bit of made it a little harder. That's like sleeping out in the open. So I do like to have a bag that has a little bit of, either more warmth or kind of blocks that a little bit.
I would actually agree with you on that, especially if you're in an area where it can be breezy, that you definitely account for it a little bit differently. I think, I used to do a lot of measuring of temperatures inside, outside, in my bag, outside the bag, sleep out in the winter when we started this company and just measure stuff.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know why, just kind of needed data,
Yeah.
But I think there's about a 6 to 10 degree difference in feel. And if you go the wrong way, there's also a little bit about, I remember one time Angie and we went backpacking early in the spring, and she was like, well, do we need a stove? And I was like, oh, no, we don't need a stove. We don't need a stove. So where this story's going, right? It's one of those that your wife's not going to let you live down, right?
Oh, yeah.
So we set up, we had the backcountry shelter was the tent we were using. Our heads towards the front of it. Not a big deal. We didn't take... It had like a door that you could take on and off, and we didn't take the door part of it. And we set it up so that the wind was coming this way. But, well, in the mountains, thermals change, So the temperatures get just about right, and all of a sudden all this wind starts coming down this way, where we're both facing this way with our open shelter. And, then it was too breezy to build a fire that was of any use either. Because, well, it was just all the heat's gone. One way, you're either in the smoker, or getting the heat or not. So, yeah, you do have to take into account the breeze a little bit. But there's ways around some of that as well. If you have, one of the areas I go to, there's numerous logs around. One of the comments people had about the Aeolus early on was that it was pitched so far off the ground, right?
Right.
The Eolus.
That was one of the things I said to Ryan the first time I set it up. Like, this looks like it's great as far as keeping the rain off me. But as far as like trapping any heat, it's not really built to do that.
No, the Eolus wasn't.
But it also won't have any condensation.
The Eolus does amazingly well in condensation. One of our employees in Tennessee, because he's in a high condensation environment, we'll send him shelters, let it rain for 4 days and be 90% humidity, and just kind of report back. And the Eolus kicks butt in condensation on that. It can be an absolute dry ride under that stuff.
I just talked to Lampers today before you got here, and we were talking about he just took the Eolus on his mule deer hunt in Nevada. And he's like, Brian, man, this thing is perfect.
Oh, yeah?
He's like, it's 12 ounces, you know. He said, I'm solo. It's spacious. It's easy to set up. It's a desert out there. He was, high country. Mm-hmm. And he's like, the footprint was one I could set up easily somewhere. And he absolutely loved it. And he's like, I don't think I can do better at 12 ounces with what I'm getting here. So he loved that one. Condensation, not an issue. I asked him, I'm curious about, like, if you are in, like you were talking about Arizona, if you're dealing with scorpions and, other, like, we had ticks really bad in bear country. And I was like, man, Ryan, I actually would have preferred to have some kind of nest.
We make an inner for the Eolus that the best way to put it, I mean, the inner integrates in really well with it. The best way to put it, and it's a 2-person inner, you can sleep 2 people, 6'4", 6'5" in it. Couples can sleep in it because the poles separated too. Right?
I like it.
But the best way to put it is, I say, with the inner, it is pretty much an equivalent to an MSR hubba.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference is it's not a freestanding tent. It requires some stakes. But then again, a Hilleberg isn't really a freestanding tent either. It does well in the wind. It does well with condensation. And so there's it's up a little bit on the sides, right? But the inner is DWR on those sides. So it does the wind blocking part. So they really were kind of designed to go together.
How much does it add in weight?
The inner, I think, is like 17, 18 ounces.
Okay.
So at that point, you combine that with the other part, and you're right about 2 pounds, but it's replacing 4-pound tents.
Yeah. It's 2 people. It's spacious.
Yeah, it's a legit.
You got the whole
2-person
vestibule on each side too, basically.
It's big enough that 2 hunters can be there
with their gear,
rifle,
and
or
each
bow
have your own entrance.
Yes, exactly. At like just barely over 2 pounds, and it's zipperless.
Yep.
So that was, we like to really focus on durability quite a bit, and those shoulder seasons. And the one area where you can really save a lot of weight is by going down to like number 3 zippers, but they're known to have a pretty high failure rate.
Yeah.
So we devised this zipperless opening that is on the Eolus. It's also on the Silex. And thus far, that seems to be going over pretty well. I think people were pretty skeptical on it. But, the people that have used it seem to be like, no, it works really well.
I like it.
Yeah, and it's minimal failure. I mean, so something eats your cordage, well, you replace the cordage.
One thing I like about Dyneema, too, is that I can touch it. I can bump my head, my shoulder against it, and so on, and it doesn't leak through it the way it does, like with nylon.
Yeah, that's with nylons, there are a lot of stuff comes down to the quality of the waterproof coating. And there's different manufacturers that can do one style of waterproof coating, other manufacturers. I mean, and I know there's a lot of talk online about who has blah, blah fabric, and people trying to claim they have, our fabric. Not only is our nylon fabrics designed to be very rugged. I mean, we use it's a corduroy yarn as the base of it, but we use our mill because we like their waterproof coating. A lot of mills, particularly, cannot get a waterproof coating up that high consistently. We tried to go higher, got a little sticky, we backed off of it. And then we have one that has a little bit of PU mixed in on one side just to get rid of the tackiness, because the sand, sometimes when the waterproof coating gets a little too high or too sticky, it kind of becomes a sand magnet.
Yeah.
So,
one thing that people have concerns with when you're talking about Dyneema is its susceptibility to heat. I mean, I think all tents are, but I asked Ryan the first time I heard about this. You're talking about a giant shelter that's 1.5 pounds when you're dealing with the Cimarron. I mean, it's so spacious. Ryan's like, it's a 2-man tent with a stove and tons of gear. It's a 3-man tent, even with a stove, but it's tight.
Yeah. I know people have done 5 with a stove, but they did it in a pinch because
little people.
No, someone submitted it on our website.
Really?
We have this app that allows people to submit photos. And it started out as 3 and a dog and a stove and buddies with a tent. And I guess it rained really bad, and the buddies'
rained out.
Tents weren't waterproof, so they all ended up in Cimarron with a stove and a dog and wood.
It is big. It's surprisingly large,
Yeah.
and you can stand up in it pretty well, and then you can run a stove.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm still blown away by the weight. Like, it's almost hard to justify bringing anything else along because it's so light for the size. And then we used it in some pretty solid winds and snow up there in New Zealand. You can see the country and what we're dealing with.
You guys were in some forbidden country.
Yeah, and that wind could get gnarly, and it did throughout 2 nights in a row. And it just didn't whip a lot in the wind. It held its own. It did really well. So how much wind can this Cimarron take?
I don't, are you talking specifically in the Dyneema one? Or?
Yeah.
That is a good question. I mean, we've had them in solid winds. I've had them in solid snow, right? We have had one customer who had a failure, and they had 64 mile an hour measured with a Kestrel device. But they also had it pitched up relatively high off the ground, which that's going to add more stress to it because wind's getting underneath it.
Yeah.
And this customer, they go to a very high wind location in Europe all the time to test gear. And from what I understand, there's a bar down. They can hike out and go to a bar, and then they go up there and sleep and see how much wind they can take or whatever until they tap out. I would say 50 is pretty solid without a problem. They busted a line lock. Line locks can bust. They busted about 120 pounds of tension. So I'm waiting to get the tent back, do a little bit of inspection on it, and look at a couple things. But pitching it up is not the way to go in the big winds.
Right.
I mean, it gets above 25 miles an hour. Pitch it to the ground, man. It's going to be.
And not only that, put it in a spot where
where
you have some wind block.
Right. I mean, that's going out and purposely.
Yeah. Any kind of teepee pyramid style setup, I'm going to try to find a spot, and I know there's going to be weather or wind.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to put it in some trees or tuck it in a little canyon or a little slot or something where where it's not going to take off like a kite. But Ryan and I stuck ours right on a ridge line that's just wide enough to fit it.
Doesn't look like you guys have much options.
No, not without hiking all the way down the mountain, and we were where we wanted to be for these tar, and so we knew we were going to get it, and we got heavy winds. I'm not sure what it was that night, but about as heavy as I get generally. Without I've been on a few hunts where it's been insane, like when the hurricane or whatever, the hit over there on Kodiak this last year.
Oh, the
Because of the
tsunami?
tsunami. Yeah, that was a little, that was a little much. But generally speaking, I don't think I would be very confident in taking it on pretty much every hunt I do. Just being aware that it's the sort of tent that needs to be set up in the right spot.
That's what I think. I mean, some people don't want to hassle with the fussiness of light stuff. You know, there's been people that have painted online that, well, everything's fussy or fiddly if it's light. It is not a fussy or fiddly tent.
No.
What you have to do is, you know, if you're expecting a hurricane, you know, don't put it on the most exposed ridge you can find. You know, seek out, you know, I don't find enjoyment being on the most exposed ridge in a hurricane.
No, I have a couple of Hilleberg tents, and I really like them. They feel like they're built for the apocalypse, but they also weigh a ton.
Yeah.
And I can't put a stove in them.
Right.
And that right there, my friends, is become a bit of call me spoiled, call me soft, but it is unreal what sort of comfort comes from a stove inside your shelter. It's a whole new level of hunting.
I agree. And it's a total game changer, especially if you got a partner back there and the weather's just kind of cruddy, that it's like you can tuck into the shelter, run the stove. You know, a lot of times the best hunting is happening when everyone else is running back to town because the weather's crap, you know?
Well, on this tar hunt for Ryan and I, we knew we had crappy weather. We knew that it was going to fade out and we could make it climb to the ridge. And if we could get there, it was like 2,500 feet straight up. If we could get to the top of that ridge, we knew the weather was going to come back that night and most of the next day. But we hoped that the next day there would be at least some break, but we would be where we needed to be when that weather did break.
Mm-hmm.
That was the plan. So we shot up the ridge before the storm hit. We sat through the storm. Next day, mostly all day in the morning, afternoon, storm, and then broke. Tar came out, and we were where we needed to be.
Exactly. I mean, you guys could have ran town and got a hotel.
We had a hut, and we talked about just staying there. And then going, we had one sunny day on the last day before the chopper came to pick us up because we'd been out there like over a week. And it was like, well, I don't want to waste it sitting in a hut. Like, I want to at least make a go of it.
Right.
And having the Cimarron allowed us to have that go.
Right. You may as well go out and give it a good try. See what happens, you know, instead of sitting around and reading
going up those hills and in that country, having a load that light, it was so justifiable. The one thing that I wish we had done, and that we talked about next year, is we would actually pack with us a condensed log of some kind for the stove.
People have done that. I've tested it. I know people it's mostly car campers, but I know some people, like especially the ski poke people, that do more winter camping in like the Boundary Waters
above timberline.
Yeah, and stuff like that. I have a photo somewhere. I shouldn't do it because we're on podcast and video here, but there's a photo of our 8-man teepee in Alaska, up in this basin. I'm going to assume it's in the Chugach somewhere, right? There's not a tree anywhere around, right? And there's northern lights going off like crazy, and these dudes are skiing this terrain like in the middle of the night, right? And I mean, it is an awesome photo. Yeah. And I talked to that guy, and he said that they would pull up wood from timberline on their way up. And yeah. So,
yeah. Well, Ryan and I were like, it would have been well worth, because, you know, I had this discussion with Cole Kramer. He's a guide out there on Kodiak, and there's often no wood around. The one thing that's great about packing in a log is you don't have to pack it out.
No, it just burns
it's like
out.
food. You know, it's like it's consumed and then you don't have it anymore. But while it's there, and Ryan and I actually did that on the last couple days of our hunt because it got colder even. And so, we we walk into a outdoor store and they had a couple of condensed logs, and we're like, man, these are heavy. There's no way around it. It's like a brick, but that thing burned for hours.
Yeah.
And to be able to burn, so we each packed in 2 to get us through 2 days, a morning and an evening each. And man, it was like heaven.
I think they burn 4 to 6 hours.
Yeah.
I did testing with the compressed logs on our Big Mama stove, because it's such a big stove, on the baffle, trying to measure temps and stuff across it over time and the most easy way to repeat the same burn was with a compressed log. So I could check the different temperatures with baffle, without baffle, and burn times and all that stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, we hiked that ridge and got up there. We didn't have any wood with us, so we ran it without. And then a couple days later, did a similar excursion, but brought the logs, and it was nice. It was great. It was well worth it. In fact, there was so much moisture in the air in New Zealand. It just kind of is everywhere, even when it's cold. But it would freeze at night, and everything would just have a layer of wet on it and then freeze.
Yeah, it'd just be frost.
And it was nice to have that stove to just take that just make that go away.
Yep. So you brought up how steep the mountains are there. They are really foreboding looking. And we may seem to have a little bit more of a focus on weight probably than some of the other hunting companies. But we live in pretty steep country in Colorado, and it's really not that much different. I mean, most of my hunts start with going 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
And then maybe you can start to level out and stuff. And, there's a good and a bad to it. I mean, usually the 2,000 feet gets rid of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And makes the,
I mean, if I'm carrying a little bit over 1.5 pounds on the tent, and Ryan's carrying a little over 1.5 pounds for the stove, and then we each split a log that we don't have to pack out.
Right.
We've got a serious setup for a couple of days.
Yeah, you do.
And one thing so when I found out that you came out with Dyneema, because I've been asking guys and companies, hey, you should make a tent out of this material. It's just so light. It's ridiculous. And it gets the job done. So, but no one has done it. Nobody in the hunting community, hunting space really has done it. So I'm curious how you did that. But before you do that, the other issue was, I'm like, can you run a stove with it? And he said, yeah, it's all set up. Aren't they worried about heat and, damaging the,
it's a double-edged sword there.
There's a little spark on it and,
No, that's a fallacy there.
Okay.
Dyneema will not burn. In fact, it's better than nylons at that kind of stuff. It is what is known as, I think it's CPF 84 certified.
Okay.
So it's totally fine on that. What is a problem is the internal ripstop pattern of Dyneema. They get weakened by excessive heat. So what we have done, if you notice this year, we are only offering the stove jacks in 2 bigger shelters, where the stove jack is further away from the heat source, right? Mm-hmm. And so what I've done is I've taken an infrared heat gun and I shoot it to see what those temperatures are all around.
Yeah.
And on the stove, on the pipe, through the pipe, outside the pipe, all around the stove jack, material near it, and stuff like that. I haven't been able to approach it on the larger shelters, a temperature that should be dangerous. In fact, it's quite a ways away, in fact. And if you wanted an extra level of safety, you could make the stove jacks, the stove ports, the material there, just a little bit bigger. I mean, it actually dissipates pretty rapidly. Now, I'm not saying someone might not run a stove of a different make or manufacturer and run it some crazy way that I haven't thought about.
Yeah.
And get a temperature that is out of bounds. But I mean, I can have a 1200 degree rating on my stovetop and exiting, I'm still sitting at about 150 degrees. And for the person who thinks that they're just going to create so much heat that the whole tent's going to melt or
Combust.
something, I mean, you would be cooking yourself. I mean, you're
well, that's just
you
it.
know, 300 degrees temperature inside. You are effectively just cooking yourself.
I'm not wired that way anyway.
Yeah.
I produce my own body heat, so
Right.
it doesn't have to get that hot. The tent.
Right.
In fact, I think Lampers likes it hotter than I do. I find myself like leaning toward the gap in the tent, you know,
Right.
so I can stay cool. I just like to take the edge off or dry out gear.
The edge and the drying off is a big thing. And I'll also do things like, you know, especially with hunting season, especially as you start to get out of September, the days start to get pretty short. And, you know, I'll make a cup of tea or a little bone
Right.
broth or something like that to sip on, something to go with the whiskey if I brought whiskey. But
How did you get to the Dyneema? Like, you know, how come others haven't used it in the past? I know it has its challenges and its issues, but why haven't more people? Because I mean, you have a clear advantage in weight. That's marked.
the first thing is you need to pretty much be made in the U.S. So that's going to separate out a big chunk of people. Well, I mean, Big Agnes is making one now in Asia, right? But they have maybe a volume that can support it. Although the review I saw from Andrew Skirka a few days ago said something of that it was stupid light and, you know, and that it was literally stupid light. Like, I mean,
Paper.
yeah, but they're using like a 0.34 ounce. It's a ridiculously thin fabric that they're using on there. I mean, we're saving weight, but we're using one of the heavier Dyneemas available.
It feels pretty substantial.
We're using one that has twice the Dyneema content, and it's a 0.8 ounce.
Okay.
So we're using stuff that's pretty far above what Z-Packs and those guys use as well.
So is it cost?
There is a giant cost associated with it. I mean, the material is really pricey, and Dyneema isn't necessarily even the easiest company to work with anymore because they have a large minimum. I mean, if you wanted to buy a minimum order from them, you're probably going to have to shell out $50,000 on that initial order of fabric and just hope you do well.
Wow.
Yeah, and, you know, to a certain extent, Dyneema as a whole, I think the people that got into podcasting early on the upswing of podcasting. It's obviously not that, I mean, you're a good podcaster, you're a good filmmaker.
Thank you, sir.
But, you know, I've been chatting with you all day, and I see why you and Ryan are friends, you know. And to be clear, you know, I never talked to you until 2 days ago.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We haven't talked.
Yeah.
And I was like, Kevin, whom?
Yeah.
And the other thing, too, people asked about this on the YouTube channels. They were watching the film, you know. I'm not paid by Seek Outside.
No, you're not.
I'm not compensated by you, and I don't have any shelters from you.
No, I brought a loaner.
Yeah.
I brought a loaner today, so you can borrow.
So yeah, I'm using a varied set of backpacking gear, including shelters, including tents, and I like the freedom to do that, so I can see what I really like and what I don't like. So I think that's good for people to know.
It is, and I mean, we're hooked up because I'm friends with Ryan Lampers. You're friends with Ryan Lampers. About 10 days ago, Ryan Lampers said he was going on a hunt. He called me, and he said, you should hook up with Gritty and chat with him, or Brian, or whatever he said. And so he sent us a text message with the numbers in between, and we eventually talked a couple days ago, and you're like, hey, let's do a podcast. I was like, why not?
Yes.
So,
and I'm intrigued by the packs because they're so different. I'm glad I wanted some hands-on, you know, you actually touching it and kind of walking me through it. Now I feel a lot more, you know, knowledgeable about what I'm dealing with, what I'm wearing.
And I think we kind of cleared the air that we're not paying you. I mean, I've seen some social media comments that was like, oh, well, you're just going to whoever the highest bidder is or whatever, right? And there's a lot of times that does happen in this industry, but there's a lot of times where it doesn't, and you just want to use what you want to use.
Like.
What you like.
I was an early adopter of Cuban fiber and have been forever. And like I said, I've been wanting something like this. So when it came out, I mean, Ryan called me on the phone and he was like, well, guess what?
No
Because
brainer.
we were talking about the hunts we were doing this year. And I'm like, Ryan, my tarp, it's huge and it weighs like I think 16 ounces, 14 ounces, or no, it's less. It's light. So I don't have to, I'm like, Ryan, it's pretty hard to beat just for throwing up and for lightweight and the coverage. And so, when you guys came out with that, I was pretty surprised. So I went and watched all your YouTube videos, which there's not a ton. I watched them on Facebook because he's like, they're on Facebook. It was Facebook Live or something, I think, at the time.
Oh yeah, we did a Facebook Live event.
Yep. So I watched that, and so I'm intrigued. How you ended up doing it when others didn't.
Well, I think there's some, like the podcasting part.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to start a podcast now than it was when you did. There's a lot more competition to get you found, right? I do think there's a little bit of a barrier to entry. We had worked with it about 4 years ago, planning a release, and
That's right.
then we tabled it. When Dyneema was sold, or when Cubic Tech was sold to Dyneema, we tabled it. We figured, well, who knows? We're planning this release, and they might not be offering the same fabrics. The price may go through the roof or whatever. Let's just kind of table it and keep doing what we're doing for a while. So that is really kind of it there. And we're always trying to push the limits of what we think we can do. I mean, and, we test stuff pretty thoroughly. Although, like I was telling you with packs, I mean, when we started making packs, there was weird test things that came up. We never tested throwing it in the back of a Rhino Line truck,
You're right.
and just, or
There's something about once you get a product on the market that it just hits so many more variables than you can predict.
Yeah, that you predict. And so, and the other thing we focus on is we're huge into customer service. We take care of our customers. And so with regards to Dyneema, I think it's a fabulous fabric. I think at the upper end of the performance thing, the upper end of the wind, our nylon shelters have 10 years of proven performance. I mean, if you're really worried about it at that very upper echelon part, just
run the sil nylon.
Yeah, just run the nylon. But outside of that very top end part, the very end of the throttle and those things, it has a lot of really good attributes and a lot of benefits. Yeah, it's not cheap. That keeps a lot of people away from it.
Yeah, it's true. But I also spend like $800 on a backpack too. So, I mean, it's like,
right.
Because that's another complaint people have is, it's nice if I could mortgage my house. It's like, I often, when I look at gear, I don't expect someone to value things the same way I do. Someone might rather carry an extra 2 to 3 pounds than pay the extra dollars.
Right.
Whereas for me, it's for what I value. It's an easy step for me to pay for that extra to shed those 2 or 3 pounds, the one-time cost. But yeah, I was curious for a long time. How come companies haven't done this?
Well, I think you have to kind of have I think you have to be set up probably in the hunting industry. It's a smaller industry. It's not everything is in REI, and I'm not saying that everyone wants to be in REI. We don't, or Cabela's, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, you're really not getting the top end of quality usually at those companies. You're getting a price point part of quality, right? And they're steering you to where they want to sell you. I mean, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but they are. They're not. We just hired a guy who worked at REI who used to refer people over to us when people came in and wanted real backpacks.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. So, I mean, you know, I never asked him to do it. I never compensated him for doing it. But when people are like, I'm planning a long backpack trip and I really want, and he'd be like,
check this out. Yeah.
Go to these guys down the road.
So on the stove deal, you know, Ryan was showing me some unique parts of your stove. Like, describe how you came up with the stove designs that you have and why.
You haven't seen anything unique yet. If you went through our old design bin, you'd see stuff that you're like, wow, these people were going way out of the box. So first off, when we started the company, we had no intention to do stoves.
Just build the shelters and buy a third-party stove.
Right.
Okay.
The first person that wanted to review our tent said, I want a stove from you guys as part of the review. And we were like, really? Like, yeah, it's like, I'm not going to do a review. It was for Backpacking Light. They wanted a stove.
Really?
Yep. And so
it's a little demanding.
Yeah. So we
I won't review this.
So we set out to make a stove, and we came up with all sorts of ideas. I mean, we used to have one that had a removable ash pan, so you could dump the ashes out without having to dump the stove out. You know, yeah, it was all integrated as part of it. At one time, we made a stove called the Sibling that people have asked us to bring back. It was nothing but the foil in a clever cone. It was actually a take on a military stove from the Civil War called the Sibley stove.
Oh, yeah.
But, I mean, it weighed like 5 ounces. I took that with a friend of mine.
Are you talking like a waffle cone, shaped cone, and it's just full of embers?
Tipped upside down, made out of titanium, so about this big, right? And that you would just use the ground to make the fire on.
And you just put it over the top.
And you put it over the top with a pipe coming out. And it ended up, you know, it was a sub 1 pound stove. The stove itself was like 5 ounces, 4 ounces.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Did it keep it warm?
It actually did. We sold it for a while. We've had plenty of people ask for us to bring it back because they won't buy it. I mean, a 4 ounce stove.
It's like taking making a fire in your tent on the ground.
Yeah.
And then just putting a cone over it to guide the smoke through the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so we did that. We produced it for a while. We've had people ask about us bringing it back. That was one of our other ideas. And, you know, I had told you I just had Angie drop me off at the Mexico border earlier this year. Well, I had her drop me and Jeff off at the other side of the mountains one time, and it was like March or April.
Yeah.
You know, the mountains are still pretty snowy and everything. It's still pretty much winter. This might be getting into some of your adventures that don't always kind of go, you know.
I've had those.
Yeah. So we were trying to save weight.
We'll eat what we kill.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's a good way to. I can tell you about one.
I've lost a little weight on that one.
Yeah. So we took one pair of snowshoes. We each took an ice axe, and we took one pair of crampons.
Yeah.
For the both of you?
For the both of us. And our plan was that one person was going to be cutting trail, and then the other person was going to be kind of making do, and we were going to
post holing or whatever.
And that was how we were going to make up big miles. We couldn't find our way out. We were looking for this pass, and effectively we couldn't find it. As we were getting ready to set up camp, I went out kind of doing scouting, and I found the exit because, like, signs were all covered in snow.
Oh, right.
You know?
Yeah.
So signposts and stuff it was all gone. It was a different world. I found the exit. We get up to this pass, and it's at like 12:07, and everything is an avalanche run on the other side, and it's bad avalanche kind of stuff. Country. And we're like, there is no way out of here except this. We're like, well, we can sit here and wait a few days for the avalanche thing to go down, or we can be really careful. And so we did.
Familiar?
Yeah.
So we decided to be really careful and far away from each other, but we got down. We didn't trigger an avalanche. So we managed to make it through there. We post-holed. We were so post-holed up to our waist. we finally set up camp on this ridge just as the sun was going down. And we were so cold and wet. That little sibling stove was so awesome. It was so awesome. Yeah, it was like, we were like, wow, this is awesome.
So how did you come up with what you have today then, currently, in the lineup?
Okay, so we started off with this big kind of range of ideas. And then we essentially worked with a couple different fabrication places.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone kind of added their own little bit of art to it, right? As how they saw it going. Then we took it, one guy built them part-time when we were just starting out, and he worked at a fabrication shop, and he got too busy. Then we started making them. My son made them for a while. I made them for a while in our basement. Now we have an actual fabrication place make them that's actually pretty big. I mean, they computer cut everything. They computer fold it. I mean, the folder alone is probably here to that other wall.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's just all computer done.
Gotcha.
So that's where we ended up where we are now with them.
You know, there's been various stovepipe designs throughout the years. How do you have yours designed?
It's not much different than what other people have done. It's just a titanium roll-up pipe. There's stackable connecting pipes, there's telescoping pipes, and there's the roll-up kind of pipe design, and it's just a titanium roll-up pipe.
Pretty basic.
It's about a foot long this way. You unravel 6, 7, 8 feet, whatever it is, and it rolls the other way. The first time, it's always a bear to get it to roll.
Kind of do that at home before you take it in the bush.
Yeah, but once it's been rolled once, it kind of has a memory, and it starts to set itself, and it goes together real easy. So,
yeah, I love the stove, you know?
Yeah.
At just over 3 pounds, it's hard to justify leaving it at home at this point, because if it rains or it gets a little gnarly or it's freezing cold, it's just so nice to I think, run that stove in the tent there.
I would agree. I mean, there's probably, it depends.
I would never have said that before, because 4 pounds, 5 pounds, 6 pounds, I'm just like, no, I'm not doing that. Not doing that. But now it's like one of my lighter shelters is like 2.5 pounds, and it's a 1-man. I don't really have any 2-man kind of setups that are sub 3 pounds. Now I have a 2-man setup
with
a stove that's the same weight.
Yeah.
For 2 guys, you split that. You're talking ridiculous lightweight.
It is.
So for the comfort and the versatility you get from having it, it's hard to leave it at home. So that's one thing I'm interested in is the Silex. So here we have a tent with a smaller footprint. It's sil nylon, so you don't have it in Cuban fiber.
No, it is.
You do?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know you had that in Cuban fiber. So how much does the Silex weigh?
I think it's 11 ounces.
So it's about the same as the Aeolus.
It is. The difference, the primary difference is, I mean, one, the material is so light that it almost doesn't change much at that level. It's half of the weight. It's cordage and tie-outs and little things like that, right?
So tell me, so the Silex, what I noticed with the Silex, having run that in New Zealand, because we did that as well, it just seems to seal to the ground in a way the Aeolus isn't designed to do.
Right. That is, there's
trap heat.
There's 3 differences.
Okay.
Outside of aesthetics and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
One is that it seals tighter to the ground. 2 is that it's a smaller footprint. It's really no bigger than a hubba, a 2-person hubba.
You can still fit 2 people in it, though.
Yeah. I mean, you can fit 2 people in it still. I mean, we say it's a 1+. Then the inner that's designed for it is a large 1-person inner.
Okay.
That is pretty slick, actually. It goes out to about 46 inches wide, and it's like 9 feet 4 in length. So, I mean, it's like you can get in there, and a 7-footer can sleep in that inner and not feel cramped. Not a lot of tents, kind of 7-footer. But
Zipperless, like the Aeolus.
Yeah, and the zipperless works better. I don't want to say better. The geometry is a little different, and it opens up a little further.
Yeah.
The Aeolus still opens up. Our goal on the Aeolus was to get pretty much where a two-person tent would, and so like if you take the Hubba or Big Agnes or all those tents that are in that vein, most of them, the opening is only like at 35, 36
Yeah, you're
inches.
kind of crawling in.
Yeah, and the Aeolus, it will open up into that 35, 36 inch range. The Silex opens up to like a 44 or 45 inch opening height. It's pretty easy to get
Different,
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that just because of the way it seals to the ground.
Yeah.
And then it would allow for a little higher opening.
Well,
is that what it is?
No, it's the Silex is honestly like, it is a slick shelter. It has been selling like hotcakes. I'm actually surprised how well it's selling.
Well, okay, so let's back it up a little bit because, you know, my friend Jeff Lusk, who was on the bear hunt with us, he just got the Silex. And Ryan was talking to me today about it, and because I've had my eye on it, you know, since I saw it, because I'm in love with the Aeolus, but I like the versatility of being able to stake that thing to the ground with the Silex.
Right.
And as most of my hunts are later season than early, like Ryan's out there now in August, I rarely get out that early. I'm really not in a lot of warm weather, other than early September for some elk. Everything after that it gets pretty gnarly cold.
Right.
I like that Silex goes right to the ground. Mm-hmm. And when I saw that it had a stovepipe in that little thing, I was like, oh yeah, I need that. That's what I want right there.
It is like a micro hot tent. It is. It literally is.
I mean, because first of all, it's like, Ryan, you could run, you know, a real small stove in there. It doesn't take much to heat up that space.
You can run our Cub in there, which is tiny, tiny.
Burn a little bit, take the edge off, go to sleep.
Yep.
Right? I'm not planning on, like a lot of guys will complain because I had to wake up every 2 hours and add wood to the stove and then go to sleep and then add wood to the stove or hour because it burns so fast because it's such a small stove. And there is true, but I don't actually care about the tent being warm once I fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's not my thing.
So there is a lot of guys that complain, and I mean, it's like you can't compare a $500 or a 500-pound cast iron stove to a 2 to 3 pound titanium stove.
Right.
And even my 500-pound wood stove I have in my house, I have to work hard if I want to get that thing to go through the night. I have to choose like oak or some sort of wood like that.
Right.
Have a good bed of coals. Really load that thing up, and then dampen it down to wake up and be like, oh, it's still burning.
Still got some coals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like thinking it's going to go is kind of like believing in the tooth fairy. You know?
And people often debate about which size to go for, the super small, medium, large, like what stove to go for. And everybody has their opinion. But to run the Silex with a really small stove, with your Cub, you're looking at how much weight?
Well, because we are not offering the stove jack and the Dyneema,
okay,
you're looking at probably in the 2.5 to 3 pound still, right?
Okay, so that's what I was wondering because I was like, okay, and I was talking to Ryan about that. I'm like, you're about the same weight with the Silex as you are the Cimarron, roughly, stove and
in a nylon Silex. Yeah, I think a nylon Silex. By the time you got steaks and stuff, you're 20 ounces, so 4 ounces within it.
Yeah. So I was saying to Ryan, it's hard to give up the space that you get from the Cimarron for the Silex, but the Silex, I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a little better, I would assume, in wind, heavier winds. Seems like it needs a much smaller footprint. So if you're putting it in a deer bed on the side of a cliff, I mean, that would work a lot better than Cimarron.
It will the small footprint of the Silex. There was a couple design objectives with the Silex. And yes, it's selling like, I mean, our shop manager is probably not happy with how much it's selling. You know, it's probably like, well, we got to keep making these
Right.
things. But it's doing well. And I mean, the Cimarron isn't a slouch in sales either. In fact, we could use your Japanese skills on the Cimarron because we actually sell a lot of Cimarrons to Japan. A lot. We were like in a Toyota ad in Japan. No genius on ourselves in marketing. We've typically been really bad at marketing, but there was an ad that was how to outfit your RAV4, and it had a Seek Outside Cimarron with it.
Boom. There's a lot of people in that country.
Yeah.
And they like their outdoors. They really do.
I mean, we sell a lot to Japan.
Yeah.
They like traveling. They're everywhere.
Yeah, they are.
Remember when we went to Prince of Wales and there was like a clan of Japanese people on the boat with us?
Yeah, there was. Yeah.
So we sell a lot there. The Silex is probably our number 2 seller right now, and it's been out like a month and a week.
Well, I mean, So tell me the design objectives. Like, what is it supposed to accomplish in comparison to the Cimarron?
It was supposed to be the smallest usable shelter that I could get the zipperless and get that could be stove compatible as well. And frankly, I mean, like, it feels larger inside than our Silvertip. If you do the calculations of headroom, I think it's got 65% of the headroom of Cimarron. And it's in this ridiculous little
I know, you crawl in it, and it's like, wow, you want it.
Yeah.
But, so, back up here, why not put the stove jack in the Dyneema? Is it the heat issue?
That's the heat issue, and we want to sort that out. We don't want to. We want to take our time and put like a year of. I mean, I went and I did nasty burns in the bigger shelters last year. I made fires in those shelters that were
smart.
No one should have been making, right? And I had remote thermometers inside, so I couldn't open the door to see how hot I could actually. One of them was to see how hot I could physically get a red cliff, right? And I think I could only get a red cliff to a temperature inside of 120-ish, you know? I mean, and that's sealed to the ground, snow around it, remote thermometers and stuff, right? And that was putting compressed logs in it and basically pouring gasoline on them and trying to, get as big a fire as I could. Yeah. But we want to sort it out a little more on those tiny shelters because, the stovepipe, if you take and do the infrared popping of the stove, I mean, if you take and you just run your stove, the colors, the titanium changes is based on the temperature that it's been at. So it's pretty easy to see, and you'll see a brand new stovepipe. You'll see very, very distinctly pronounced and not being very pronounced.
Dissipates as it goes up the pipe.
Dissipates as it goes up. And it's pretty, it loses, I forget, I don't have exact notes with me, but it's like 100, 120 degrees per foot just about if you have, say, a surface temp on the stove of 1200, which is a pretty hot fire.
Yeah.
But that surface temp goes down pretty rapidly. But in the shorter shelters, I mean, you're getting into that there's just less real estate there, right? So we've got a couple samples. We're going to burn the heck of them. It's hard to get excited about running a stove when it's 85 outside.
Right.
My heart's not in it.
So there is a possibility there's going to be something set up with the stove pipe.
There's a possibility, there's also a possibility that it may not be feasible.
Right, that's what I was going to get at.
Or there's a possibility that you could make it feasible, but that you have to increase the size of the stove port. That adds enough weight that it practically makes it a wash.
Right.
So,
right.
I mean, we have an Aeolus with one in it now. We actually has 2 stove jacks in it in different locations to try the different locations.
Yeah, I'm curious about that because you put a stove jack in an Aeolus and where it doesn't seal to the ground as efficiently for good reason. My question is, how well does it can retain heat? And when you're dealing with a stove in a place that small, sometimes that much airflow won't even impact.
It doesn't really impact it. I mean,
I was curious.
I did some testing earlier this year on a Dyneema version with a cub stove, and it actually, it
did the job.
It did the job. I mean, it would definitely take if you were in a couple crappy days of weather in archery season, and
you could dry out some gear and all that.
Yeah, it would still do the job. So they did the job better than I expected.
Yeah,
with the gap.
I was curious about it because heat's heat, and you do have some trappage that's going to happen, even though you have ample airflow. Curious about that, given the fact that it has that much airflow with the heat, could be very comfortable. In fact, because I hate getting too hot.
Yeah.
And I wonder, in that setup, I wonder how it would, maybe that in itself prevents too much heat from gathering inside the tent just because of the overall design of the shelter.
Yeah, I haven't put enough miles on it yet to do that. I think that a small stove is more than enough in there. But then again, I mean, it hasn't been 20 degrees out for a while either.
Yeah.
Well, when it gets,
you'll figure it out.
Yeah, when it gets down in the 20s, we'll kind of see what tune we're singing. So
we've talked a lot about the new stuff, the Silex, the Aeolus, and the Cimarron. Just backing up, why do you think the Silex is doing so well compared to maybe everything else?
The new kid on the block.
Well, they're all new.
Well, the Cimarron's not that new.
True.
Right. But
the Dyneema version.
Yeah, the Dyneema version is new. I think it looks slick, first off.
It does. It's got sexy lines.
Yeah, it has sexy lines. I mean,
everybody loves a racing strap.
I think that goes...
And it's stove compatible.
And it's stove compatible, and it goes tighter to the ground. And I also think that the Aeolus has kind of been...
Price point.
The proof of the zipperless, right? People were raised a suspicious eyebrow at first. Then a few people bought the Aeolus. We didn't push it real hard. And a few people bought it, and they're like, oh, it works well. More people have been saying, oh, yeah, I've had mine. It works really well. And so people are like, okay, that zipperless thing works really well. And then the Silex comes. It's got sexy lines, good curves, pitches in a small spot, but has massive room, really, for a solar shelter. And I think that you and Ryan slept in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can two-person it if you need.
And I think that the Sil nylon version of the Silex, what's that cost?
Like $189 or something. It's not expensive.
And then the Dyneema version of the Cimarron?
$800 and something.
So basically, we were talking about how they were 3 pounds roughly with the stove setup, or a little over.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it too, because I can tell you, like, if I can, for a little, I mean,
yeah, you can get a Silex and a stove cheaper than you can get a Dyneema Cimarron on its own.
Yeah, and that way you're still achieving the weight. And if you're a guy that's hunting by himself, and a lot of us are, I refuse to share a shelter. Like when I was running like a freestanding or a Hilleberg or something, I got to a point where I'm like, I am not sharing a shelter with my cousin Ben. I'm not sharing it with Ben. I'm not with my buddy Anthony. You bring your own shelter. That way I don't have to deal with you brushing your teeth and like making noise and passing gas and doing all the stuff in the shelter. You do you, mess up your own space. And so for the last, 3 years or so, I bring my own shelter. But with something like the Cimarron, I don't care about. I can share that, or the Aeolus even. I can share that. There's so much airflow. It's not I don't feel trapped. Right. You have your own entrance. You're not dealing with one entrance where somebody's got to crawl over the other guy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is like, we try to design those in such a way that you don't have to crawl over your buddy in the middle of the night and stuff like that. I mean, there's definitely a good reason to have your own shelter sometimes. Mm-hmm. But, at the same time, you got to be picky with your hunting buddies too.
Yeah.
You probably get out with a lot more people than I do.
Yeah, right.
So you might not be as picky.
Ryan's worse than I am.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Ryan's not Well, it was funny because we've been hunting quite a bit together the last couple of hunts, the bear and the tar. And halfway through the tar hunt, Ryan's like, well, you move this and you move that, and I don't know about that and stuff. And I'm like, what? Oh, nothing. After like 4 days of that, I'm like, what? And I couldn't never tell if he was talking to me or not, or talking to himself. And I'm like, he's like, Brian, look, I'm not used to anybody being with me. I talk to myself all day long. I talk to myself. So 90% of the time when I hear him just talking, it's not to me. It's to himself.
Thinking out loud.
Just talking to himself. And so a guy like that.
I'm going to have to give him ribbing on that.
Yeah, a guy like that, he doesn't like to share his tent much. But, he likes his private time. He's an introverted dude.
Me and one of our employees, Nathan, we've went on a few hunts together, right? And I've hunted with my son. I used to hunt with a guy that built our stoves. And you see people kind of come in, they drop off, they get busy with their kids, and especially when their kids get soccer age and all that stuff and all that. So hunting buddies kind of come and go, but we've also been like, man, you almost have to choose your hunting buddy more carefully than your spouse,
Well, Ryan was just saying that the other day. I fully agree. Who you hunt with, to me, is nearly as important as everything else. Mm-hmm. And what I'm finding more, I actually am enjoying hunting alone a lot more than I did in the past. Ooh. And Ryan is for the first time kind of hunting, with partners. And so that's new. And so, I think that there's a lot to, getting used to it.
Yeah.
With different people and different styles. But I do like the fact that with a Silex and a stove for that price point, I'm golden, and I can share if I have to.
And you can get an inner for the Silex as well, right? And with the inner, I mean, you have everything from.
It's extremely versatile.
Yeah, you can go out in the desert.
Yep.
In the middle of the summer.
Ticks were the issue we were running into in Backcountry. Yeah. I've never seen that many ticks
the
before.
way the inner is actually designed in the Silex as well is it's mesh on the sides. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's floor fabric mesh on the sides, but it's a DWR over the top, so it's essentially almost a 4-season over the top like that too. So it's
nice.
The Silex is pretty. I mean, it's a weird
versatile.
It's versatile, but it's also kind of a weird geometry trick too.
Yeah.
Because when people see it, they're kind of like, "Is this a spaceship?" It looks kind of like Darth Vader.
Well, I know you got to go because you guys got to drive. You got a long drive back. But before you go, there's one more thing I wanted to get to, and that was the bug out.
Oh, okay.
Lampers was telling me today that his favorite. I was asking him, okay, of all the shelters now with Seek and different, still what is the shelter to buy, or if you had money, what is it, or what do you recommend? And he was just going through each one. He couldn't decide, and I'm like, Ryan. And then he said,
gun to your head, let's do this.
Yeah, and if you could only buy one tent and nothing else, which one would it be? And he's like, man, it's really tough for me to say I wouldn't buy the little bug out because it's so versatile. I can make this base into its own teepee, and I can make it into a one man. And then I can put the tarp between the two and sleep my whole family. Like it's like buying 3 different shelters in one.
Yeah, we really should have patented that stuff when we came up with it.
Hindsight.
Hindsight 2020. We were just kind of a poor startup, but we really should have patented it. I've seen a couple other companies come out with similar concepts. I've even seen another company that is making hot tents that is made in Asia. Mm-hmm. They came out with a tent that is it even is the colors of the original bug out.
Really?
Yeah, our first bug out was a brown and tan combo, and they're
could have patented that one.
Yeah,
it's pretty unique.
Yeah, and I'm like, I should have patented that thing. But we are patenting the zipperless, like the Eolus.
Nice.
stuff like that, and Silex and stuff like that. So,
Well, what do you think about that? Ryan's take on the little bug out, because he's got his whole family, and then at times it's just him.
well,
and to buy that all in one, and he is so cheap. He is one of the most frugal.
really,
Yeah.
Frugal, cheap guys on the planet, and so for him, it's really tough to
Fork over the
cut
cash,
loose.
man.
Yeah,
He ain't
yeah.
doing it.
And so he's very, very dollar oriented on every purchase.
well, I have knives that are better than that as a standalone knife.
Mm-hmm.
I have.
We're looking at it for those listening.
Yeah,
Looks like a Leatherman's.
yeah.
What is it? A skeleton, or I forget what they're called.
Skeletool CX. It has the slightly
Mm-hmm.
upgraded blade. I have an S90V knife from Benchmade.
Yeah.
That's a nice knife. I have some Fallen Evens that are awesome knives. I have a S35V knife. We're selling an S35V steel hunting knife that is manufactured by and designed by Brad Brooks from Argali.
Right.
And that's a great hunting knife. But that is the best multi-tool I know of. Everything on it works, and it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the little bug out.
Yeah.
That is the little bug out. I have better knives. Cimarron's a better pyramid tent when I need one. The Silex and Aeolus are better tents at
What they do.
than the little bug out. But
It is kind of a good argument for the buy one thing that can do it all.
I carry this one in my pocket most of the time because sometimes I need something to do this.
Yeah.
Sometimes I need something to do this. And sometimes I need to cut something open.
Yeah.
So,
I like that analogy. Paints it. How much is the LBO?
I have no idea, and whatever it is, it actually needs to be pricier.
It's going to change very quickly.
No, the reason being is because the zippers are custom for us, and they're pricey, and sometimes we have a hard time getting them.
Okay.
And
Because they are unique.
yeah,
They all come together.
yeah, and they're custom links and stuff for us, and it's actually kind of a pain in the butt. The LBO, we probably make more money on Cimarrons and a lot of other tents than we do on the LBO. It's probably not one of our better profit ones.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at it, but that's going to be my suspicion, just based on the costing of materials, and the zipper's kind of pricey. So, but I think if you were to buy the whole setup sans nests, it's in the $600 range, and then you could add a couple nests, and you'd probably be in the whole thing for under $1,000, which sounds like a lot, but go to REI and look for a good quality family tent and start seeing what your price looks like, and you'll find that it really isn't that pricey.
Right. Interesting. Well, this was fun.
It was.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Not only was this fun, but for having not known you at all, right? Until a couple days ago, we chatted briefly, and we said, why not? And you got a lot of cool stuff going on. You got interesting stories. Had a good time
An
today.
eclectic past.
Yeah.
Hopefully future.
Yeah. Right.
It makes it interesting.
You got some interesting stories, man.
Yeah, you do too.
Yeah.
I got to meet Angie.
Yep.
And I'm excited to run. I'll try not to. I feel a little stressed borrowing a shelter.
No,
but
don't worry. I mean, I told you that you got a very interesting stove jack, the only one in existence, which I think is a improvement.
I'm excited to check it out.
Is it a sauna attachment?
No.
Backcountry sweat lodge?
I'll tell you about it offline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm excited to try it all out. I'm really impressed with my weight to comfort that I'm getting, durability. We've tested it under some pretty extreme conditions, so it'll be a fun year. I've got a lot of backcountry hiking and colder season type hunts. So we're going to be running the stoves quite a bit, and I'll have a better idea too of kind of my favorites over time, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So
it's been fun.
Yes. So people can follow Seek Outside on Instagram, Facebook,
YouTube, and seekoutside.com. Don't think that's our main ones that we are on.
And inventory right now. If a guy's trying to get something here because he's going hunting in a week or two.
So we have a live inventory app on our site.
Do you?
Cool.
So if you stick it in a cart,
it says in stock.
Say in stock, ships within, or up to 1 week or 3 weeks or something like that.
Okay.
You should show us how to do that.
Usually we beat if it says 3 weeks, that usually doesn't mean 3 weeks. It usually means a little faster. And you can call and find out a little more if you really need it.
Okay.
But we do have the live inventory on our site. Most products are tracked via live inventory. This is our busy season. We have been insanely busy this month. And we've been a little short-staffed as well. People going back to school, things like that. So it's been a little stressful around there.
I bet.
So
this time of year, it's that time.
Yeah, if I call up our production manager, hey, can we do this new product? Oh yeah, I know that's not going to go over very well for me.
Yeah.
So,
all right. Well, Kevin, Tim, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Check out Seek Outside, and as always, stay gritty.
Awesome.